Thank you, everybody, for being here today. First, I want to give Randy a big round of applause. Thank you for setting the stage for today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I joke with Randy. My name is Michael Mulgrew. I'll be your moderator and also a panelist today. I joke with Randy all of the time about, you know, every time people talk about policies or anything to do with education, I cringe because it's always people from above. So you gave us the voice that needed to be put out here today, because it really is about what we try to do with our children each and every day. I also cringe every time I come to Washington, D.C. I came here because this to us here, this is the panel of hope. Yeah. Okay, this is the panel of hope. And I got here about 10 o'clock last night. I turned on the TV and I heard all the craziness, and I turned it on again this morning, and it reminded me of a teacher when I was a teacher in Brooklyn and New York City, when I heard people debating things like No Child Left Behind, and I was like, they don't know what they're doing. So now we're having a national debate about who gets to lie to the public first. But the folks here on this panel just decided and made decisions that we were just going to figure things out and do it, and we know what would make a difference. So I'm very proud. First, I would like to ask each of the participants to give a quick little scenario about what goes on in their school district, what it's about, and then we're just going to really keep this conversational and a little bit of a free flow. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. All right, I'd like to introduce the YABC School District from Los Angeles, California. Dr. Mary Sue, thank you so much for being here. If you could kick it off.
Thank you so much, Michael. First of all, we're honored to simply be invited to this panel this morning. There are so many different things that have happened in the course of the last 20 years that we have built this labor management collaboration over, and we are still refining our work to this day. But for those of you who are not familiar with ABC. I always think that people might think, oh, is that a real district? Because it's kind of like XYZ, and people don't realize it's not the acronym for the alphabet. It's actually 3 very small districts, Artesia, Bloomfield, and Carmenita, that unified in 1965. We are located in the east corner of Los Angeles County, and we serve a lot of different cities, including Artesia, Cerritos, Hawaiian Gardens, as well as East Lakewood and portions of Norwalk and Long Beach. And so our school district is comprised of 10 preschools, all the way through the 5th largest adult school in California. And so for the total, whenever I talk about how many students we serve, I count every student, from those that we serve in our preschool program all the way to adult school, and it's about 31,000 students. We have 19 elementary schools, 5 middle schools, 5 high schools. Over 51% of our students are low income. We serve schools where we have about almost 17 Title I funded schools in the district. 93% of our students we are a minority majority district, and we only have about 6% who are Caucasian white student population. So the challenges for us are enormous. You can imagine serving so many different cities, as well as a very different kind of a demographic population. But I just want to throw in the fact that for me personally, if a child of an immigrant family from China who's non-English speaking, whose parents only had an elementary education, can still be a leader of one of the best school districts in California called ABC Unified School District, I owe it to the teachers that I was a great member of in the Chicago Public Schools, by the way. I'm very proud of all of them. So I have the great privilege of being here today, along with Ray Geer, who's president. President of ABCFT, and we are more than glad to share many of the things that we're doing in our district.
Okay. Ray, do you want to kick in a little bit?
I think it's important for you to know that we've been doing collaboration for about 20 years. Dr. Sue is the third superintendent. I'm the second president. Been doing this for 8 years. She's been doing it for 7. And so we've had some really good foundation, but we think collaboration can be achieved. You don't need 20 years to get there. So we're happy to be here. And
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Mark.
Thank you so much for having us. It's always always a thrill to be able to showcase Meriden, and you know, I've been a lifelong resident of Meriden, and so it's nice to have seen across the course of the last 10 or so years Meriden getting a little more positive highlighting and things that are going on. So very, very pleased that that's happening based on a lot of the collaboration that's being talked about today. Meriden is a school district. Well, first, Meriden is located, for those that don't know, it's about 2 hours in between both New York and Boston. So New York is 2 hours south of us, and Boston, or as I like to refer to it, home of the World Series champion Boston Red Sox.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Thank you.
You got beaten again last
It's
night.
2 hours.
No offense.
2 hours north. I know. I saw a great Nationals game last night. So, but anyway, so we're smack in the middle in that area in the Northeast, and we're a population with 8,600 students. We have 8 elementary schools, 12 schools in total. Time's up.
Red Sox.
Yeah. Is that what happens when you talk about the Sox?
That was the
So,
Yankees.
that was Yankee fan running the board. So we have 12 schools in total, 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools. We have 2 high schools. We have 3 associated programs as well. We have a focus alternative ed-wise, our Venture Academy, which focuses on our special education population, our Success Academy, which focuses primarily on our overage, undercredited population, and then we have our College and Career Readiness Center, which focuses on adult education, attainment of GEDs, also English language courses, that sort of thing. As I said, we have 8,700 students. The makeup, and I'm going to look at my notes very closely because I want to get the latest numbers right. We're 72% minority, 77% free and reduced price meals, 19% special education, and 15% English language learners. So we're a very urban district. Probably our biggest struggle, as is with everyone, is financial support. We have a budget of about $117 million. And I know that we're record-breaking in Connecticut. I'm not sure if it's national, but I'd love to know. But we've been flat funded by our local municipality for the last 8 years in a row. So no local increases. We've had the luxury of having had some state supports as well as private funding come in, and a lot of that comes from the collaborations that we've done with our community supports as well as our unions, and being able to put ourselves out there to be able to make things successful for our students has been very difficult. So we're very pleased to be sitting here amongst this panel with the ability to do those types of things. We've been very, very creative, and it's out of that the necessity for collaboration has come into play, and that primary collaboration has certainly been with our teachers, and so I'm thrilled to be here today with Aaron Benham, our Meriden Federation of Teachers president. So.
I think that was your intro.
Yeah, that's me tossing the buck.
Good morning. We are so pleased to be here. Thank you, Randy, for this great invite. I always take the opportunity anytime I can to brag about my school district. I am in my 39th year in the Meriden School District. 36 of those years were spent in the classroom. And I also sit on the State Board of Education, which is a little bit different for a teacher to do in Connecticut for sure. We have been in our work about 9 years with the collaboration, and I was sharing with ABC District this morning, it was because of an article that we read actually in the American Educator that brought us to where we are in our collaboration, and realized with Dr. Benigni, who is our superintendent, that we could do this, and as long as we went by their creed that they had, that we could work on this. It's work. It didn't happen overnight. The work is still there every day, but we have been very successful in this collaboration and have done a lot of great things with very little funding to get it done. So we really try to look about how we can resolve it, and it's always about the kids. And our teachers are always part of that voice, always. There isn't a decision made without them being there. So that I'm very proud of.
Thank you. Richard Carranza, so Chancellor of New York City School District. I believe that's a little south of Yonkers.
Yeah.
So,
A little bit. Yeah, so thank you. So I also want to thank Randy. Thank you for the invitation to be here. And I'm a little starstruck with the people I'm sitting up here with. When I lived and worked in the Bay Area in San Francisco, we looked at ABC and what they were doing in terms of their collaboration and been following their work for, a good, probably those 20 years. So I want to thank you for being an example for us. But I'm really proud of the fact that we're from New York City. New York City, people maybe know the statistics. It's a little school system of 1.1 million students. We have 1,800 schools. We have about 152,000 employees, 79,000 of whom are teachers or part of UFT. They are, without a question, our equity warriors in New York City. Teachers are doing what I like to say is God's work in some of the most difficult circumstances. When you think about living and working and making a difference in children's lives in the biggest city in America with some of the most challenging circumstances, it is our teachers and our frontline folks that take that on every single day. So I'm really excited to be here because as a chancellor, as a superintendent, people will tell you, it's about labor, it's about management, and you have to carve out your space, and it's ridiculous. Try doing that in your significant relationship with your significant other, right? You exert your dominance and see how long that's going to last. It's not going to last. So once you get past that first eHarmony moment where it's okay, you're okay, I'm okay, then you really have to work at it. And it doesn't have to be a chore, but you do have to pay attention, and you do have to support, and you do have to work together. So I'm excited about sharing the relationship that this guy, Michael, and I have been able to forge in the year that I've been in New York. But more importantly, I think the work and the groundwork that we're laying for whomever succeeds us later in New York City, no one will ever be able to go back.
thank you. It's been a lot of fun, but a lot of hard work for us because you always have people on both sides yelling in every argument. But it was more of finding a real trust partner and saying that, okay, so it's fine that we might get along, but actually how can we use something that we both believe in to actually drive change inside of the classroom? Because it's nice to have conversations when we both start in the same place. What are we doing? And let's think first and foremost, how does it affect the classroom? Because that's always what's missing out of the discussion. Everybody's always talking about structures and systems from up here, and they wait, oh, we'll see how it filters down into the classroom. Our conversations are always about, so what do we think this means in the classroom first, and how does that filter back up? Mm-hmm. And that's been a lot of the conversations that we've had. But I think that the reason we're here as a panel is that, one, we're all educators, we're hardwired that we get great joy out of helping children, which goes to Randy's speech. That is the one thing that all human beings who go into education have that inside of them. But the folks that sitting up here made a decision that in a role as a leader, they want to take that piece of DNA inside them and have trust with somebody else, knowing that that is going to actually drive a better result for children. So I'd now like to talk each school district, talk a little bit about something concrete that you have done that you know is driving change and leading to better student outcomes. And we'll start with ABC.
Well, let me just start by sharing how we got started with our labor management collaboration and partnership. It was 20 years ago, 1999, when we decided that we wanted to focus on an issue or a compelling reason to partner. And for us, it was the classroom. It was where we looked at the reading achievement of 6 schools, and they were simply abysmal. It was so unacceptable for us to have students performing only at the single-digit level in reading achievement. And so we, as a collective group with all 6 of the schools, with Ray, as well as with our principals and our union reps at the school sites, we decided to look at how can we resolve this issue and raise that reading achievement together. And so for us, that was an enormous feat. But we have managed to now look at these schools today, 20 years later, and see that the schools that are involved in these, what the 6 schools that were involved are either California distinguished schools, a national model middle school, schools that have earned so many different awards by their reading Olympics being first place. And these are schools that are high poverty schools where the students are primarily English learners. That's what we started with, and that was important for us. So when you talk about going back to the classroom, it has to start there, because for us, it was about how can we raise the student achievement levels in the district. I really appreciated the fact that when Randy talked about the work that John McCarthy and Dr. Saul Rubenstein did from Rutgers University, we've been under that microscope for over 15 years. We've been in their studies to look at what difference does a collaborative partnership make towards student achievement. It does make a difference. And for us, that was very compelling.
Yeah, that was 1999. And what was really significant about that is that you had both organizations working together on some collaborative rules of engagement, of how we would work together, behavior norms and engagement norms. And we were actually working on a mission statement for 5 years about kind of rehashing. That was important to have the leadership of both organizations to really think about our mission statement together and what we were going to focus on. And so I was lucky to be I was one of the high school teachers at this high school. And what we found as a district is that it was such an example of investment for both organizations, and it really increased the feedback that the teachers were able to give to the leadership about what was needed for change in all of these schools. So it was what's most important is, not only to help the schools and our students, but it also encouraged teachers and administrators to work together, and the capacity that was built out of that still has waves. We're still feeling the waves of that. I was one of those teachers, and I'm became the union president. Some of those other teachers became administrators at the district office. So you're building a collaborative culture just with one project.
So Ray, I'm going to ask you a quick question. You were a teacher in a classroom at the time that this started.
I was.
Right. What was your initial thoughts? Now, being a teacher, that the school district's now going to move to this. Just lay it out. What was your initial thought at first?
Well, I was in a special education class. I came from general ed, went to special ed, and I was looking for tools and resources to really reach the kids that most needed it. And so to hear the union and the district both saying we're going to invest extra money in these 6 schools to give them more training and on a focused subject area was it was great. It was just the kind of support that any teacher would need in the classroom, and to be able to give feedback on what your kids needed was the most powerful thing that any teacher could have, so you could get the resources you actually needed. And so
Okay. Yeah.
it's great.
So first, you see, first, special education teacher, all right, we're going to get resources. Any school, if we get money, all right, this is a good thing. But more importantly, I'm going to get some voice. And all of a sudden, you just take the leap.
That's right.
Okay. All right, who wants to go first?
Well, I'll kind of answer your question, and I'll let her get into the intricacies. I think in thinking about the shift in culture that was talked about earlier. To across the course of the last 9 years since we hired Dr. Benigni as our superintendent, we've had a few different initiatives, and the focus is always, again, where does that affect the students? We most recently had a block scheduling change to 8 periods a day in the high school that took some coordinating and collaboration. We have grown to 3 schools with extended day programs on our elementary school level, and it's taken community partnerships, that kind of piece. But going all the way back, I think one of the very first initiatives that was done were our PLC and data team time for our teachers, and that took a lot of coordinating in terms of the philosophy change of, every teacher doesn't have to work the exact same number of minutes in a day, depending on what level you're on and where you go. Working that out with the with our union. Also providing that time that Randy mentioned earlier that's so important about that collaboration and making sure they get there. So I think the PLC data team is probably what comes to mind the most, and I know Aaron was right in the trenches for that. So
What is a PLC?
Professional learning community.
It means something different, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Excuse
Professional
us.
learning community. Way to put me on the
acronyms.
spot, man.
Sorry.
Professional learning community. So,
Professional learning community. And I agree with Mark. It was probably one of the first initiatives Dr. Benigni and I took on, and it was pretty much right when he became superintendent. It was work that we were doing with our previous superintendent that we were as close of getting this initiative, and it all fell apart because of busing. Like, so much falls apart. If there's budget problems, busing is the straw. And it fell apart. And then that superintendent left, and Dr. Benigni came on. And he kept asking, why did it fall apart? Why did it fall apart? We've got to make this work. This is going to be our first one. We're going to show these teachers that we can work together, and everything's going to be. And so we did get it to the point that he really went to the bus company. He went to the magnet school that was involved in it. And I don't know what he said to them, but all of a sudden we were going to have PLC Thursdays. And what that meant is that we took wraparound time from our contract that already existed that wasn't really as useful as it was when it was put in the contract 20 years earlier. We didn't have a lot of kids that were able to stay after because we no longer had light buses. So all that time that teachers were sitting there, because it was in the contract, was really not useful time. Okay. So we sort of swapped out some of that time and we put it all into one day. And teachers, we have what we call extended day Thursdays, and that's where they stay every Thursday for an extended hour to their regular day. And all teachers do that. And this is where we got our time. We knew we needed time. We knew. I was a middle school teacher, so I was used to having the team time. I knew what it meant to have to look at data. I knew that was all coming down from the state. I, as a middle school teacher, had it, but then quickly realized my high school folks did not, my elementary absolutely did not have that time to work together as a grade level and so forth. So that was the way that we put it in. And I thought, great, we'll start the following year, and no, we're going to do it now. And so we literally we'll never forget, Randy, the day we put it in. We were on our way to Brooklyn for an AFT labor management conference, and we had to call a snow day on our first PLC day. It was.
Wow.
I'll never forget it. Like, what do we do? I said, well,
Mixed emotions on that one, huh?
I say call the day because we have no setup yet for what happens if you're opening early or late or whatever. And we'll never. I said, see, we should have probably waited until September, but he insisted that he wanted to do it right away. It still stands now, and in fact, we just went through. The work, as I said at the beginning, is always. It's never done, and so even this initiative was looked at about 2 years ago. For our extended learning schools, we realized it wasn't appropriate time for them. It was too much redundant time for our extended learning schools, so we had to revamp it. And now we're revamping it again to give autonomy to all our schools. I just said, this is now, it was the same, we had like a cookie cutter plan for our district, what you did on these Thursdays, and then we realized this wasn't working. The 8-period initiative, I said, we'll talk about it on Thursdays. No, we can't touch it, that's not scheduled. So now we have gone back into that plan and we've just started with our secondaries, giving autonomy for the rest of this school year. It's working fine, so I'm sure the autonomy will be put into all our schools, that they can determine what they need as a school to spend time on in that hour, and not having it being delivered by the central office. It was an initiative that was free. It didn't cost us anything. It was a shift of our time to create time. And in all, we added 15 minutes to our school day,
Increased contact time.
increased student time. So it was a win-win.
And how was it for you leading this through as the union president? How was it for you to lead your membership through that?
It was tough at the beginning because we had, like I'm sure many districts, we had all these meetings after school with all these, and I'd have to say to my element, what does this meeting mean? I don't even know what this stands for. What are you meeting about? And they were, and we would kept saying that they were voluntary, but they weren't voluntary. And so for the elementary folks, it was, are you sure it's just going to be Thursdays, that they only can use Thursday? And that sold them. They needed to be sure of that. I think that's why Dr. Benigni wanted to put it in. He wanted to prove, he's not even in the district yet for a year. He wanted to prove that I saw a problem you were working on. I wanted to show you that I'm on it and I'll fix it. And I think that's why he put it in so fast. It did require a vote and so forth, and there was a lot of talking. But we do all our talking together. So if we have an initiative, I'll go to schools, but I will always have the superintendent with me, and same for him.
Okay. So, Michael, what did you do in New York City? All right. So I'll start this.
Hey, Mike, what
Very
did you do in New York City?
Keep it friendly.
Before Richard came to New York City, the previous contract, through the contract and through changes in New York City, we started surveying our schools differently to look at our overall grade for our schools. Before that, the overall grade for every school was basically 85% a student test scores, and we wanted to move away from that. So we started moving policy. One of the significant things that we were able to get into the surveys from actual schools was I and the mayor actually said, we want to know if there's truly trust, if there's voice, and there's collaboration. And the surveys are done. There's complete anonymity and all of it, so parents get to do it, students get to do it, and teachers get to do the surveys. When we were approaching this contract negotiation, when Richard became chancellor, we started analyzing all of the different data from New York City. It was very clear, and we were hoping this is what would show, that if you were dealing with what we call students with high challenging indexes, which is basically most of our city, you were 3 times more likely to be successful in moving student achievement if you scored high on those 3 indicators. Yeah. And we were like, well, that's pretty good, that's where we were. But when we looked at it even further, you were 4 times more likely to fail if you didn't. So if everyone loves to talk, I said, so now we've heard about all of these political agendas and philosophies from above. This is pretty much concrete. If you're going to move students, you're 7 to 1 odds if you're actually doing this the right way. And the right way is true trust, collaboration, and voice. So going into contract negotiations with Richard, this was something that I just put right on the table, and it led to a program that I'll now let you take it.
So, Richard, what did you guys do?
Oh, Richard, what did you do?
I do want to recognize somebody that's here as well. You're going to hear her in the next panel as well. But our Chancellor of the Board of Regents, Dr. Betty Rosa, is here. And the reason I want to give her a lot of credit is because she spent her career working in the Bronx in particular. She's from the Bronx. Betty from the Bronx. But it's going to be important in the context that I'm going to give. So I get to New York City. I'm the new Chancellor. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that philosophically, New York City's Department of Education has moved in a very different way. And there used to be, in the not so distant past, a philosophy that said teachers do what you're told, and we don't need to hear from you. Just do what you're told and take your medicine and you'll get better. The philosophy changed with my predecessor, Carmen Farina, and then I come in, and lo and behold, first thing we're going to do is we're going to negotiate a new contract with UFT. And everybody says, oh, UFT, and they're going to be hard. And what we did is Michael and I took a very different approach because we're in our eHarmony moment. We just got to know each other. So Michael and I met to discuss what are we going to do about this new contract. And basically, our conversation went something like this. Michael, you taught. Yeah. How many years did you teach? Richard, you taught. How many years did you teach? Really? So, Michael, what is the 1, 2, 3, 15 things that drove you crazy as a classroom teacher? And he gave me 20. And then he said, Richard, what are the 1, 2, 15 things that drove you? I gave him 25. And I said, wouldn't it be great if in this negotiation we actually took on some of those things? Like, wouldn't that be great? And he said, well, let's do it. And through the process of that conversation, we said, where in New York City, from all of the data that we have, do we have the most challenging circumstances? Not blaming, not objectifying any community, but just from the raw data, the challenges and obstacles, where is it? Undoubtedly, without question, it's in the Bronx. Some of the most challenging circumstances, beautiful community, but challenging circumstances. So what if we did something in the contract that memorializes all the good practices? So what are those good practices? We memorialize a process for collaboration. We memorialize a process for giving teachers and school-based personnel a voice in determining what the improvement plan is for the school. We actually fund and are able to put some resources on the table, so when those collaborative groups come together, they do their root cause analysis, they look at the data. Oh, and by the way, let's fund facilitators that will train the group on how to look at the data. And then when they come up with their plan, they can apply for micro grants to actually fund the solutions that they collaboratively have come up with. Like, it was like revolutionary stuff, but for us it just made sense because we both remember the days in the classroom where somebody comes and they tell you what you're going to do, yet have never really been in your community, never been in your school, and we have some good ideas, or we could, right off the bat, tell you why it's not going to be successful, yet we were never asked. So we, through these conversations, came up with something we call lovingly the Bronx Plan. But the schools aren't just in the Bronx. They're in different communities, in Brooklyn, in the Far Rockaway, and there are different communities, but a majority of the schools that we identified based on the indicators are in the Bronx. So in order to be part of the Bronx Plan, this is what we also said. We're going to negotiate that into the contract, but in order to be part of the Bronx Plan, we're going to identify you from all of the indicators as being a candidate. But in order to be in the Bronx Plan, you have to apply to be in the Bronx Plan. And the application process was very simple, 3 questions. But the principal and the chapter leader had to both sign off on that application saying, we want to be part of this, and we agree that we will work in a mutually beneficial way around the problems of practice that we identify. So we've just launched that, and it's part of the contract. And the pushback that Michael and I have gotten is that, well, you're taking authority from other groups in the school, and you're de-emphasizing what should happen in an improvement plan. And Michael and I say, look, I've never been in a school where if you don't have a collaborative relationship, I mean, I've been a principal, I've been a teacher, and the places that have been magic have been when we have a mutually respectful relationship, but we're working together. And we both have skin in the game. And the skin in the game is that great working conditions are great learning conditions. And as a principal, that's what you want. So we've memorialized, our example is the Bronx Plan. We could give you a ton of other examples, but the Bronx Plan for us is our bet, like all in, that through mutual collaboration, through a process where you're developing capacity, through the respectful process of including all voices in determining how the path forward is going to happen for that particular school, we are going to see the conditions that students learn in greatly improve, and the outcomes improve as well. And by the way, these schools, none of them are in very high rent districts, so no surprise. So the other thing we said is, we have in the contract what we're going to do, but by the way, all of these schools have now gotten a facilities walkthrough. All of these schools have gotten a financial scrub in terms of what positions do they need and what are the essential positions. And very quietly, not quietly anymore because there's a lot of cameras, these all have now gone to the top of the list in terms of resources, top of the list in terms of attention, top of the list where they used to be at the bottom of the list. They're now at the top of the list.
So it's been an interesting journey because when we had that conversation, Richard and I said, the thing that drove me more insane and frustrating, more than anything else, was I worked in a very challenging school, and I would always call them the thank you parade would walk in and out of my school on a weekly basis. Those are the people who would come in and tell us how they were here to save us, how everything we did was horrible, and we would just say thank you. Thank you, thank you. They'd leave, and a new group would come in the following month to tell us how horrible we were and how everything we do, and that this is our new plan, that we had to follow it, and we'd say thank you, and they would leave. And every teacher who's been in a school like that understands exactly what I'm saying. And so when we were trying to get to this, and we first said, let's get schools with high collaboration and all the rest of it, and then we did say, let's go with the schools that are the neediest. It was kind of freeing. A lot of elected officials got upset with us because we said, let's just own the fact that we have schools that have been neglected for decades. You all love to say the teacher's fault, but let's just own the fact that they've been neglected for decades. And it probably, and it usually aligned to, they didn't have the political power, quote, money, to push for what they really needed to get. Yeah. And the rollout at first was, the teachers themselves did not believe this. They were in a big meeting in the Bronx office, there's hundreds of them there, and we said, listen, you're going to be able to tell us what to do. And they're like, yeah, uh-huh. This is the basis. You get to tell us.
It's kind of like, I'm from the IRS, I'm here to help you with your taxes.
Yeah.
Same reaction.
And that has been the hard part. And the other piece has been interesting for both of us, because we both have sort of large organizations, is the folks in our organization like, no, the school is telling you what to do. Well, no, you're not here. You're in charge of doing what they tell you to do. And that's been a lot of fun, to say the least. But I really am looking forward to moving it and to see where it all goes. But I'm quite sure we're going to be successful. So what's the greatest challenge you guys have had over here in Connecticut?
Budget.
I mentioned 8 zeros, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's probably the biggest challenge. Being able to get the resources that we need. We know what we need to do. We work together to even have an understanding of how to do it, and then you need the resources to get it done.
So, how do you take this now? This is complicated, because this is one of the main parts of Randy's speech. This is a big problem that every educator is facing, and like it or not, we can have the best teachers with the most collaboration, everything else. If there's no dollars, right, how are we going to get this done? And they continue to tell us that we have to get better and better and better as we're getting less and less money. Wonderful little paradigm they've set up. So you're actually doing great work. You moved student achievement. What's the plan? Is it just hope that the state gets its act together? Hope?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's not good hope.
Yeah. I'm going to skip that question. Not answer it honestly. Where are we right now? Washington?
You're in Washington.
Well, here's the thing. While it certainly is something that holds you back, I think that if Meriden can send any kind of message out there, it would be that try not to let that get in the way.
Yeah.
It's a roadblock, but it's a bump, and you can get over it. And one of the things that I'm very proud of Meriden about is the fact that we've gone out and we've been not afraid to try new things. We know what we need to do, and because we collaborate, we have the point of view from both sides. So we know how to do it. We know what to do. We just need the resources for doing that. So one of the strong points of our superintendent, again, who's been with us for 9 years, is that he's not afraid to fail. So try it. If you fail, you fail. But when you're willing to try new things, there's typically funding out there for that. And so, we go after that. We've had the luxury of a lot of great partnerships for a lot of funding that's come in from private organizations. We've been able to go through the state and get funding for certain things that have been out there statewide. And again, as I said before, that's really saved us. When you're looking at 8 zeros in a row, you can bury your head and say, oh, what are we going to do? There's no way we're ever going to do this, and I don't think that that's anything that our district has ever said. Raise the bar, increase the challenge. People will meet the challenges if you're there. and go after what you want. And that's kind of where we've come from. I think.
And it's a little easier, actually, to really go out there and do that, knowing that you're all in this together, that you're each other's safety net.
Without a doubt.
We are, and like Mark said, I mean, we even try to tell that to our teachers. It's harder to sell with your teachers. Don't be afraid to fail. You know, if you fail, it's fine. Nothing's going to happen. Some believe that, but that's a hard thing to get over.
Can't get everyone.
But certainly Mark and I mean, we have failed at things, and we go back. I mean, we always said if we're always going to make sure that we know. No surprises. You're not going to be surprised, Mark. He knows I'm not going to be surprised. A lot of 7:30 in the morning telephone calls to let me know what happened, you know, just so we don't have those kind of surprises. But that's important because if there's something very major going on, it's important that we stand together. I might not agree with it. This present budget is the perfect one. I don't agree with the budget that we've had. We've had tough cuts, and I did not agree with it. But it is what it is. And as Mark said, we have been very fortunate with the work that we've done that private funders they know we get work done. But we're afraid of losing that, you know, because if we start failing because we don't have the support or the teachers, that could dwindle too, and I don't know what would happen if that dwindled. But we certainly are on the national spotlight because of the work that we do, and so we're a very good bet as a district to have. But we do a lot of things that are just outside the box, try to convince them to try new things. And that's important. I like that you waited to the end to talk about the Secretary of Education, because that I've been preaching to my executive. I'm coming to the end of my term, and to my executive board that you have to stay away from everything we can't do. You can't blame it on the Secretary of Education. You can't blame it on the City Council. You can't blame it on the governor. We're still here, and we have to figure a way to do this. If you just blame it, then we just perpetuate that negativity. It's hard. It's very, very hard, and you get to, you know, there's some schools that I'd rather not maybe visit on a particular day. Yes.
Everybody has challenging students.
But you have to do it, and you have to listen to them. I've learned that over the years. Never ignore the complaints. That's the most important thing. You have to listen to them. Even if you think they're outrageous, I think you have to listen to them. And it is important that you can fail and know that you can fail.
So speaking of listening and Secretary of Education, ABC, everything you've done on empowering and teacher voice is quite exceptional. It's something you cherish, but what are the challenges that come with it?
Let me just, I'm sorry, I'm using the microphone. I don't think my lavalier was working, but the one thing that is important for us in ABC is that we clearly have structures and systems in place to address whatever those issues might be. For example, we have a local control accountability plan, which is California's accountability system. And one of the things that we ensure that we have is our many meetings with our key stakeholders, including all of our union reps, both certificated as well as classified. So, for example, our students are changing. I know that we all know that. They are changing, and there are so many more social, emotional needs that they come to school with, and trauma. Many of these practices, for example, we also serve a homeless population as well as many foster youth in our district. And so one of the things that when we talk about these structures that are in place, we have to talk about it with all of the members of the union groups to talk about, well, how are we going to address the needs of our students who have social emotional needs. And so in our district for the last 4 years, we've built into the system a plan so that there's a social worker in every single one of our schools. There are wellness coordinators, counselors. That's over and above the counseling that's also provided in our secondary schools. But that's something that is a conversation that we have in these meetings, that we have to ensure that we have the support. We talked about nurses. We have 14 nurses in our school districts to serve as well as to support our teachers. I think that's important to know what are the supports that are there for teachers and to ensure that we have the funding, our $237 million that we receive from the state as well as the federal government, can only go so far, and we're still seeking full funding in California. But nevertheless, it's important that we look at the funding and say, well, what's our priority then? And we seek that voice from our different labor groups.
Yeah, the reason we have wellness coordinators and social workers in every school was 2011. We started having hard conversations about data. Attendance data led to, well, what are the reasons why we have disproportionate numbers for suspensions? And then that led to what needs do our students have? And then that led to our parents need support also. There's so many changes happening for parents that we need to be the support for them too as districts. And so 4 years ago, we made sure that we were starting to address that social-emotional piece. And just recently, since the Parkland shooting in Florida, unfortunately, there's been an uptick in what is going on in our schools. And thanks to our listening structures, our structures are listening structures, they're feedback loops. We've been able to hear from teachers, principals, community members, parents, and students that they need actually more support. That we have to double down on our support for mental health services, that it's getting that crucial out there, that we are we're the guiding light as the biggest democracy delivery system in America. And if we don't take care of the mental health of our students and our community members, we will lose our patients. And so that's really where we are right now. Is that's the greatest challenge, is having these listening structures and making sure that listening turns into policy.
I just also want to add that even though the data for our district at the suspension level is only 1.9%, that's very low. 1.9% of our district students are suspended at all.
Okay.
We have not had an expulsion for over 7 years.
Wow. Okay.
That's amazing. We have not expelled a single student for 7 years. But that means that we have to have these systems in place that Ray just talked about. And that's important, that we have those structures and systems in place to support our schools.
Very impressive to have that feedback loop at all times. So I know we're getting close to time. So for you, Richard, we started with Randy's speech today. We know the decades what we've gone through on education. Clearly disrespect, non-listening, being part of this panel, which I called the Panel of Hope. How you, as being the chancellor of the largest school system in the country, how do you see your role in trying to really look at and start to shape better educational policy? As the biggest example, what would you like to see over the next couple of years?
Well, I agree. These are my colleagues, give me tremendous inspiration and hope, because you can prove that this can happen. I think for me personally, you just have to keep it real. Mm-hmm. Colloquially, what our kids would say, you just got to keep it real. So that means that you start, as we've talked about, with a focus at the classroom level. What does it take to empower, to give the capacity building to meet the needs of the students? And then how do you take that feedback and make that policy? And I think that, we have a chancellor in our state that's a lifelong educator. Mm-hmm. We have a union leader, lifelong educator. You got a chancellor who was a classroom teacher for over a decade. I think as more of us take these roles of leadership and infuse that grassroots in the classroom philosophy, I think the more that we will be able to at least be part of a different narrative that gets told. Now, it's not lost upon me either that New York City gets an inordinate amount of attention. It's the largest school system in America, and all the things that happen in America around public education. So I do think that we have an opportunity. I wasn't born the chancellor. I am not going to die the chancellor. Hopefully not.
You say it.
But I say that in the sense that I also recognize that there is a window of opportunity to really solidify and memorialize a way of work for whatever amount of time that we have that makes sense. And I think, you know, if we just keep our focus on the real work, and the real work happens in the classroom, and that we systemically then build the structures to support that real work, like they've done at ABC, like they're doing in Connecticut, then what we end up doing is leaving a body of work that says, look, this does work, and this works really well. The other thing that I want to say is to our fine elected officials, you have to stop looking at education as an expense. It's not a line item on a budget that you can zero out for 8 years. It's not an expense, it's an investment. And let me be really clear, because you ask any teacher, they will tell you this. If you do not invest now in creating conditions and educating children, you will pay much more later when you incarcerate those that you have not invested in. So you invest now or you will pay much more later. Because you see, none of us here have the ability to raise the price of the widgets that we're selling. We don't sell widgets. We don't create widgets. We educate souls. So that means that you have to invest in the very education of those souls, and we don't have the ability to go out and create more resources. We get what we get, but the philosophy is important, because if you look at it as an expense, then you can zero out the budget for 8 years. But if you look at it as an investment, and the future investment of the very people that are going to churn your economy, if you want to put it in that term, then you have to invest. And the things that we're talking about are not things that people would say are just fluff. These are real, tried and true, tested in the classroom strategies that make a difference. And we're building more and more of an evidence base to show that they really do make a difference.
And for me, the challenge over the next couple of years is there's two different battles we're involved in. One, I'm quite open about always saying there is a group of people who are just trying to privatize public education, and it's a scheme, and it's just straight up attack, and they will spin/lie about anything to try to achieve their agenda. And then there are others who are well-meaning, and their motivation is a good place, but their lack of true understanding of what goes on inside of a classroom means that sometimes they have the power and they create policies or regulations that they don't understand actually are very harmful when it gets down to the classroom. So for what we're all doing, especially for what you and I are doing right now in New York City, it's to take this moment of time to really push up that when educators are all working, when the adults are actually listening to each other, working with each other in a trustful way, that's how you actually start achieving the dream that we all want, which is every child has getting the education so that they can live a successful life, and because that's the dream of everyone who's ever walked into a school building. And fighting back the disrespect is a big deal, and we know this. And because I believe that we're blessed, that we have that genetic makeup, that we actually love working with kids. Some people, I hate all the cliches you've heard about teaching over the years, because I do believe it's a blessing and a calling. But now empowering that blessing and calling and using this moment of time to push through, I think, is the opportunity that we have and the challenge that we have. Yeah. So now I'm looking at the timekeeper. We'll keep flashing cards. So do you want us to take... You? Okay. We can do a small section of Q&A. I guess we did our jobs well. Nobody has a question. Nobody? Well, thank you all very much. I want to thank this wonderful panel, the panel of hope, for doing a great job. And more importantly, for the great work that we're all getting done, because we understand what's truly at stake, and we're not going to let the games people play get in our way. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Michael.